I have the great privilege of welcoming to the stage here Scott Cook, the co-founder of Intuit. Scott, welcome so much to Canada. Welcome to Toronto. So happy to have you here today.
Hi there, David.
Great to see you again, Scott. Thanks for joining us. So with no further ado, I want to kick it off with our first question. So Scott, today we have many startups and innovators in the audience. Would you be able to share some of your thoughts on best practices when it comes to innovation, including perhaps some concrete examples from here in Canada?
Well, let me pick two. So we have a set of methods we call Design for Delight that we developed over time as we found what produced great products. And so we decided to double down and copy and keep doing more of those techniques. The first is a set of methods around customer empathy, to get deep with customers, walk in their shoes. And I think a great example of that is what you have led up in Canada last year. We've long known that cash flow, the flow of money in and out of a business, was key to success. You run out of cash, you run out of a business. So cash is king, and that became even more crucial in the downturn, the lockdowns following the pandemic, when many businesses had to cut back, and a few businesses were growing so fast they were running out of cash. Yet the methods to figure out your cash position are really hard. Because most accounting looks backwards. It's a record of what happened in the past. But for cash flow planning, you need to look forward into the future. And most accounting systems are not set up for that. So people try spreadsheets, which is a lot of work and not very accurate at times. So what you guys pioneered is this AI-based system that's a cash flow planner now built into QuickBooks, based on the real problems that businesses have, projecting forward of, okay, if I'm hiring that employee, can I afford it? Will I get the cash to cover the salary? If I get that new equipment, if I buy stock for my business, buy inventory. And what's cool about it is that since you've got to predict the future, and that's hard for a lot of people, it uses the cash flow planner in QuickBooks uses your past, your bank account and accounting records, to do AI on those to project forward to the kind of expenses you should expect going out 30, 60, 90 days, your choice. So that if you see your cash position is suddenly going to sink, you now can take proactive action because of the AI prediction, so it doesn't sink. Instead, it keeps you afloat. And I think another practice of innovation, of great innovators, is experimentation, iteration. Try it with customers and learn and change. And I think one of the companies in the accelerator, Dry is a great example of this. They also work on cash issues, and they tend to focus on accountants. And in doing Follow Me Homes, a method that we use to get customer empathy, they connected with a bunch of accountants and found that while accountants feel great about their compliance work, many accountants wanted to do advisory work but weren't sure how to start the conversation to become an advisor. Recognizing that problem, Dry said, well, let's create kind of a insights card, like a conversation starter that their software could produce, that the accountant could use to start the conversation with a client about advisory work. So they produced, and they focused on cash flow, and they produced a sample card, a prototype, and then they tested it with accountants. And they learned a bunch of things that weren't the way accountants wanted it. And it didn't work the way accountants wanted it. So they iterated once, twice, 3, 4, and eventually the 5th iteration. After 4 cycles of experiments, the 5th one was the one that worked, and that's the one they're rolling out, and I think we'll demo later today, when Blaine gets on stage. So those are 2 of the methods and some of the recent application here in Canada.
I love it. I love it. The cash flow planner was also on the QuickBooks side an example of something that we accelerated to market after COVID. So it was something that we knew could have an impact for SMBs and something that we brought to market even faster. And it would just so happen that Dry was also looking at that in an adjacent space. A really great example there. So Scott, second question here. Today, we're going to hear from some of these great startups in our accelerator program. whose efforts and vision really align well with what I was mentioning before, Intuit's mission of powering prosperity around the world. Can you share your thoughts on the power of mission-driven tech organizations and what that means to you?
Well, I think one thing I think we all know is that we're never better than our people. Our people, the best talent is crucial to the success of an organization. And my simple observation is the best people want to work for more than a paycheck. They want to work for what their work adds up to. What's the sum total? What's the impact on the world? The best people are mission driven. And it's our goal to have a mission so compelling that it motivates all of us and then we'll attract the best. As you mentioned, our mission is powering the prosperity around the world because that's kind of the engine of progress. If you think of small businesses are the major hiring engine in developed countries. As small businesses prosper, they hire more and the whole economy prospers. And it's also central to, if you're a small business person, and I started a small business that's grown, in a sense, you and that small business are almost inseparable. Its success is your success. Its failure is your failure. So prosperity is more than dollars. It's your essential contribution to your economy, to the economy, to your family. It's your self-view. It's how your in-laws view you. So that's our commitment to prosperity, and it's no accident the accelerator worked that way. There are many accelerator programs, but what's unique about the one that we have crafted together with Highline Beta is that it's mission-driven. That all of the companies there are there because of the shared mission to power the prosperity of Canadians.
I love it. I love it. Yeah, I can really feel the mission. It infuses everything at Intuit, and it's something that I felt in this accelerator program too. It just gave everyone the energy, that purpose, that velocity that we've taken to solving these problems together. Really, it's one good thing that's coming out, silver lining out of this COVID pandemic. Now, speaking of the pandemic, as we're all sort of acutely aware, it has increased the need for resilience in the face of adversity. It's something that I think we've all felt in our lives, and something certainly that small businesses have faced. Can you share some examples of adversity that you have faced as the founder of Intuit and how you overcame those?
Yes, and I've found a pattern in the adversity, at least how we survived the adversity. I mean, early on, as we were building the software, this is back in the early 80s, software was sold in boxes, and those boxes were sold in stores. If you didn't get in the stores, you didn't have any sales. So during building the product, we were darn sure we were going to get in the stores. And then I was the sales force. I went out, contacted a bunch of stores and distributors, and we were shut out. We were so tiny. We had no venture capital. Nobody invested. And no dealer would take the product. So, I mean, that's a death sentence if you can't be where customers go to shop for software. So that game plan wasn't working. So we had to find a different play. If your playbook isn't working, find a different play and get good at it. So I kind of in desperation, I tried selling our software to banks and having banks resell it. But I didn't know anything about selling to banks. So I found a buddy of mine who's an ex-IBM salesman and really good at it to coach me on how do you sell large enterprises. And that saved our bacon. We ultimately got 10 banks operating in 11 US states to buy the software from us and then resell it to their employees, to their customers. Without that, we wouldn't be here. But then, sadly, the observation was while the first 2 banks were able to make a go of it, the subsequent 8 banks bought the inventory from us, but really weren't very good selling it. Boxes of product was not something banks really do. And after seeing 8 subsequent banks all fumble, I could no longer ethically go to the next bank and say, oh yeah, this is going to work, because the last 8 for 8 didn't. Worked for us, but they couldn't get the volumes they wanted. So suddenly that meant our only sales channel kind of disappeared on us. So this was, we'd made a little money selling to banks, and we decided we got to get another channel because it's not going to work. So we decided retail stores still didn't want our product. So we decided we'll try to sell the software directly using direct response techniques. You remember the old magazine ads, text heavy, coupon on the bottom. So again, I didn't know how to do that. So I found a guy to teach me how. He was a direct response marketing expert. And he taught me the principles, and I would sketch an ad and design it, and I'd send it to him. He'd send it back with comments, and I'd do more. And we iterated, and we took the last money we had in the company and launched those ads. And by God, they worked. By God, they worked. And then once that started generating demand, then stores actually wanted the product. And then the business started tripling. I noticed the same pattern when we had to learn how to design ease of use in software in the earliest days. We didn't know how to do that, but I went and found the best expert I could find who really knew about ease of use. And this is back in the early 80s when software was hard to use. He had great concepts, and we just employed those concepts. So generally, the learning I've got is when the game plan or the playbook isn't working, you got to find a new play, and that means you got to learn something new. So go find the best wheel maker and have them teach you. So that's my learning on resilience in adversity.
I love it. I love it. It's also the comment on learning agility and making sure you can learn from others. It's something that we've felt out of the accelerator as well. I hope the startups are learning a thing or two from our innovation process, but I've certainly learned stuff from them as well around resilience and how to pivot quickly. It's really inspiring to see them in action.
Yes, gosh, I sure wish there was an accelerator when we're getting started. I mean, it's one of the great benefits of an accelerator like Highline Beta is they've got experts on tap, so you can be learning the next play you need to master.
It's funny you described the direct market. It sounds almost like growth hacking today around how, in software you need to iterate quickly on the marketing to get that growth going. So it sounds like there was an early permutation or early version of that you were working on, which sounds really interesting. Mm-hmm. So next question, Scott. As mentioned before, this accelerator program in Canada, it's a mission-based collaboration focused on improving financial prosperity. Would love, and it's based on this concept of collaboration. Would love to hear your thoughts on the power of collaboration in the tech industry and what that could ultimately achieve.
Yeah, well, tech industry, big phrase, lots of swirls and currents of motion. I think when collaboration works best is when there's alignment on purpose. When people and different organizations are going after a shared purpose together, then they can find the opportunities to share learnings, to share opportunities. And that's, I think, what's clever about the accelerator program that you, together with the team at Highline Beta, have assembled, is you get all the benefits of the accelerator together with the shared purpose and shared mission, so we can share opportunities, share learning, share techniques. So the Intuit Innovation Catalysts are kind of skilled coaches in the kind of techniques of innovation that we've used in financially related and small business and consumer innovation. And until this, I don't think all that came together. And I look forward with continued success for this sort of program to continue and to scale and to reach across Canada. One great thing about COVID, amongst all the wreckage, is we've all learned to work at a distance remotely. And that's helpful in countries that cover many time zones. So I think those will be, as you said, some of the positive silver lining to the cloud of COVID.
Great. Well, you mentioned Canada, Scott, around, obviously that's where we're focused here. And a lot of, companies in Canada are at some point challenged by internationalization, right? We try to grow in our backyard here, and at some point we want to scale beyond our borders and get to other markets as well. I know that you have also led Intuit through several growth phases of trying to expand within the U.S. and then beyond the U.S. And as folks may or may not know, we're part in Canada of an international team that's trying to expand, Intuit's products and services beyond North America. Given that we have still some time here today, I was wondering if you could share some thoughts on, when you think about growth and what it means to be, a global player. And in Canada, we've had some successes like Shopify, et cetera, that are starting to hit that stage. I just wondered if you could share your thoughts on, what it means to compete globally, given that's something that Canadian companies are trying to do more of.
Yeah. Well, I think at the most foundational level, one of our folks said it well years ago. He said, if you want a big business, solve a big problem. If you want a little business, solve a little problem. So I think fundamentally it gets to the choice of problem that you solve. If you found a really big problem, that's a pain point in your country and in other countries, that's the kind of foundation level. So if you're solving the problem that nobody else has solved, and that problem exists in multiple countries, that's your foundation to have a multinational, international business. Now, the second thing we found is there's a trap. The natural human mental process is to extrapolate your own experience and say, well, that must be the experience for everyone else. And that might be right. On the other hand, it's also likely that people in different countries might be different. They might have a different set of problems, or they might not have the problem that you have. So there's a trap where your gut feels might allow you to understand your own country or guess at it from your own personal experience. I wouldn't trust your personal experience to extrapolate that to other countries. So instead, that's where customer empathy comes in so importantly. We start by saying we don't assume anything that happens in the US is the right thing to do in another country. We don't assume the problem that happens in one country is the same as the problem in another country. Start instead by saying, tabula rasa, what's the most important problem we can solve for businesses in the next country? And we find the problems vary. And so what we have to build varies. There may be a core that carries over, but our goal is to be more local than the locals. That means we really have to understand the people, and in this case, the small businesses and their habits, practices, foibles, preferences, and their fears in each country to find where is that big pain point that we need to be solving. So those would be the two principles. Find the big unsolved pain point that's not solved in multiple countries, and then make sure your own assumptions or your own blinders about your own country don't cause you to misunderstand what's true in other countries. Start fresh, understanding from the ground up what's most important to your customer in France or Germany or the UK or Australia.
Love it. It's that customer empathy again, understanding that customer problem. It's core to the innovation process. It's core to how you're going to be successful as a company. And just really some of the things that we talked about with the startup group in the accelerator cohort around just conveying that process and that thinking, and they've benefited from it in terms of how they've approached their problem set. So thank you so much, Scott. I think we are now close to the end of this fireside chat. There's Jason coming back online here. So
yeah, I'm reading some of the, hey Scott, I'm just reading some of the comments that are coming in from the audience, and they're awesome. A lot of people like the idea of experts on tap. They were thinking if they could just, maybe when this whole thing is over, we actually go to a physical tap and pour ourselves some experts. and what I thought was really cool about it was just how you showed your learning mindset and your growth mindset throughout your career. Some really inspirational stories there. And then when you closed it off, I think this idea of sort of think globally, but then have that local expertise to drive it home from the local customers. Really, the people are taking away a lot of great insights, and I think they're excited and ready to see how you've given back with the accelerator and what people are thinking about today.
Good. Well done.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Jason.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Scott.
David.
Thanks for joining us. We all appreciate your perspective for sure. And it was, my hope is that it's inspiring and informing a whole next generation.